Howdy, today we're going to be replacing the shock and spring assembly in the front and the shocks on the back on the 2009 Nissan Sentra. Now this will work, same procedure for everything, leading all the way from 2007 to I think 2013. So this should be helpful for some of you guys out there. Now I have 150,000 miles on this vehicle, and I noticed that it was leaking in the left front when I had experienced some oil that had been dripping down, and I was like, wow, that looks kind of like motor oil. But I noticed it more frequently and larger stains there. And so what I noticed is that you can see some dripping right there. And what it was is basically at a little failure, and I could see that there was a bunch of oil that had accumulated and was gathering dust and everything else at the bottom of the strut assembly here. So what happens is you get a failure in the seal in here, and it leaks down the shock here, and it collects down here, and it leaks from here down, and it just keeps working its way down, and you start getting some drippage. And so every time you drive, your shock is going up and down, and it starts to leak out more and more oil. So you'll always have it after every single time you drive, and it'll leave a small puddle, and then it'll go away. So anyways, I'm going to replace this. This is basically a full kit that comes that I got from Amazon. And it's about 260 bucks, I think, for the full thing. And that comes with a complete coil over, and so you don't have to sit there and mess and put in new springs and everything. It comes with new hardware for it. Let me show you the part number for that. Part number for that. So this is the front assembly. The rear just has the shock itself. That's it. And then it also comes with some sway bar linkage. And so sometimes you get this rubber boot here that either the grease dries up or leaks out, or you get some cracking on it, so you need to replace it. So anyways, this should help quiet up the front end and give it a better ride. So the back end's pretty easy and simple. The front end's a little more difficult, but what you gotta do is remove that top plastic assembly right there for where the windshield wipers are. And there's 3 bolts on each side that we're gonna have to take out. And then you're going to have to remove the linkage from the upper controller arm, the lower controller arm, as well as, since we're replacing the sway bars linkage, we're going to have to take those off. So first I went ahead and cleaned everything off with a hose underneath the car on the wheels, and that makes it easier, less debris falling on me and getting me dirty. But now we're going to go ahead and remove the wheel and start to jack it up. Alright, the tools you're going to need is a breaker bar is very helpful, not absolutely necessary. A punch, some pliers, a crescent wrench, your basic socket set. I use the 1/2 inch. And then you got some jack stands, a small jack. I got a bigger jack I'm going to use. A small jack works fine, or even the car jack works. And I got a torque wrench, but if you crank them on tight enough, you don't have to worry about that. But I'm going to use a torque wrench to be extra careful. And so that's the basic setup that we'll be able to take care of everything here. Alright, first we're going to have to take off our wiper blades. So what we're going to do is remove these little caps on here. There we go, there's 1 and 2. Let's get, of course, it's never easy. There we go, there's 2 of them. I'm going to set these down in front of the car. And then I'm going to use a 14 millimeter, the best millimeter on here. Go ahead and break these free. Alright, and they just screw off with your finger. Very easy. Get the other one here, 14 millimeter. Breaks off, and get the rest with your finger. Of course, I live in Arizona, so there's no rust on. And then we work these off, okay? You might have to wiggle it just a little bit. Wiggle it just a little bit.
That's the wiper.
Alright, I'm going to have to close this probably in order to pop these off. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close it so I can get a little leverage. I don't want my head smashing on the top there. Alright, I was finally able to get them off, but what I had to do was I had to really crank on these things. I was able to get under the side over here with this end of the crescent wrench and kind of use this as a prying tool and pry up to kind of break it free a little bit. And then I was able to lift this arm up and get under there and finally get some leverage underneath it. As a matter of fact, I had to kind of twist it a little bit, bring the wiper up, and then get under there so there wasn't any kind of forces acting on it when I'm pulling it straight up. So you might have to do that to get it out. Little tip. All right, next you're going to remove this rubber gasket here, the weather strip from here. Now you need to be careful because it's on a double-sided hook, so you have to pull on one side and then pull on the other side to free it from coming up. So you're going to pull on one side, going to this side, and then pull on the other side to free it up. Okay. Here, pull on one side, free it up, pull on the other side. There you go. Let's go over here. And pull on this side, free it up. All right, pull on that side. All right, over here. There we go. Last one over here. Okay, now let's remove. I'll go ahead and show a picture of those hooks up in the top right up there. All right, next we got to remove the cowl section. All right, and so this cowl section has these plastic clips here that you're going to need to use a flathead screwdriver, or you can push up from underneath. Oh, there it goes. And that'll help remove them. But on the ends, yeah, you need a flathead screwdriver to kind of carefully pry them up. All right. Okay, when I was trying to remove these tabs right here, since these ones get exposed to the sun, those ones easily just shattered when I tried to pry on them with a little flathead screwdriver. And I was using this small little guy. Now, and it wouldn't pop off, so what I had to do is kind of get it a different direction. All right, I tried to get this one off with a little small screwdriver, and of course it broke off there. So I had to literally pry up this and pull up with the flat part of a small rubber tool end, and then that's when it was able to pop off. So I had to close my hood slightly so I can get a hand on this side and lift up, and then get my rubber tool that wedged in under here to lift up and pry it until that popped up and out of place. So now I'm going to try and do the other side with that. All right, so I got the flat end of a small crescent wrench here. I'm going to use it to get under here, kind of put it down in there. I'm going to come in with my hand and try and get on the cowl here. Let's pry up on both sides. There we go. Popped it up without breaking it. That's another good tip there for you. Look at that. So don't break this. Don't snap the head off of it. Now I gotta go buy some new ones. You'll learn from me. All right, now with everything unclipped, now we can go ahead and remove the full cowl. First with the passenger side. I'm gonna slip it that way. Pull it up. But here, let's go ahead and do this side. Okay, now with that off, we should be able to access all the bolts from the top on here. So each strut has, let's see, 1, 2, and then 3. So that third one back there is holding it back in. So we'll eventually have to unloosen all 3 of those. But now what we're going to do is going to go ahead and take off these wheels. We're now looking at the wheel, aren't we? That's where the wheel should be. But we took it off to investigate this thing and remove it. So if you look at here, you can see all that oil that's caked on there. And you can, let me get the light down there. You can kind of see where it was coming down everywhere. See the oil, and that's kind of where it's dripping down from. Now, if you look here, you can see that the oil came all the way down there. And look at that. That is where it was coming down from, and here is the cause. Look at the boot, or lack of the boot. It got shredded somehow. Probably just age, heat, maybe a little rock and some debris. It got shredded. So what you had was a failure of that seal, and then oil started leaking and working its way down. So we're gonna go ahead and remove this, and I'll go ahead and set up a camera in there so we can watch the entire install. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and remove the upper controller arm from the strut, and that I'm gonna use that 13/16 inch socket again, and I'm gonna use my cheater bar here. But this was difficult to get on, so I had to hammer it on with the rubber mallet and then kind of use this. Once again, I think the actual size is a 21 millimeter, but that's kind of uncommon. So get that off. All right. Okay, now I got an 18 millimeter on the end of a cheater bar here with a big old extension. So I gotta make sure I'm gonna try and keep this thing as square as possible. Break this thing. There we go. Got it. That would not come off with my normal ratchet there. So that's good, I got that sucker loosened. Let's see if I can get it by hand now. No, can't get it by hand. Then I got the socket wrench here. It's coming off. Okay, to completely remove this sway bar linkage bolt, I had to jack up the bot down below on the rotor there. I went ahead and jacked it up, and that basically relieved the pressure on the sway bar because the vehicle is obviously canted when you only lift up one side at a time. So I had to lift up this to even it out so the sway bar applied even pressure here. Now this easily slides out of the strut. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the bolt back here, or the nut back here on the sway bar linkage, and that should be complete, and I should be able to remove everything out of here. I moved the lines off, those weren't too difficult. And then with this now supported, I can hammer these bolts out. It might be easier if I... metal hammer for that. There we go. Should be able to pry them out the rest of the way. Okay, gave up on trying to remove the steering linkage, or the sway bar linkage bolt right there, where the nut went in there. So this sucker, came out pretty easy up top, but just from having to try and remove the bolt or the nut on the back side of that with no way to gain access to it or apply leverage to it, it's a big pain in the butt. And I tried everything, couldn't get any cheater bar or anything like that back there. So I may have to forego changing out the sway bar linkage. So we'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this strut. I'm going to have to take out the bolts on the top, but that's pretty difficult. So we'll see. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and hit out these bolts right here. Okay, hopefully this isn't flying at me. I got my jack underneath. I'm going to place it just a little bit under the rotor in case this puppy drops. Got everything unhooked. Alright, came down just a little bit, right on the jack, and not with too much force. I'm going to see if I can lower it here, see if it works. Alright, yep, it's free to move. There we go. There we go. You can see how it goes there. I'm going to go ahead and lift up the jack a little bit, just so it takes the weight off of it. Alright, so that way the axle's not holding all that weight. You can see this puppy is free to move except for the bolts on the top. Let's go ahead and remove these bolts on the top here from the strut. 1, 2 there, and then 1 back there. So we'll try and get to that sucker right on top, and you have to use an extension to get to that one. Alright, now I'm up top here. I'm going to move these 3 bolts on the top, and these are 13 millimeter. So I'm going to get this off. Now I'm using the extension on the back here because it's difficult to get to. I'm doing this one first because I don't want it to be the last. This is the most difficult spot. The last one's going to be this one right here. I dropped the bolt back there. There we go. Alright, I went ahead and switching over to the 13 millimeter box wrench here. It's the only thing that'll fit. Go figure. There we go. I got 2. And I'm going to do this. Oh, yeah, there it goes. You can feel it wiggling. So let me go ahead. My tool. Move these down here. Okay, I can see this guy wiggling down here, so I'm going to hold it still. This would be a lot easier if you had a friend. Alright, you got it last one off. And now this thing is just gonna fall out here. All right, now you can really see that oil leakage on that thing. Look at that boot, just destroyed. Who knows what caused that failure? Probably grit, heat. But, yep, just leaking oil out of this main gasket here. So, yep, it's time for a new one. Oh, yeah, you can see all that. Alright, so I want to show you something here. So, if you get a really cheap set, the springs won't be the same, or at least the same thickness, and won't have the same springiness. But these ones are 0.56 inches, yeah? And these ones are, you know, 0.56. Yep, 0.56, yeah, so right on the edge there. So they're about the same spring thickness there, so that should be good. Alright guys, I learned a lesson. I was not able to get this off because I don't have the right tools. So I gotta get this. I would have had to remove this nut on the back side there, which is too difficult. Basically, there's not enough clearance between this wall and here for the vehicle and the frame to get something that I can get leverage with, like a cheater bar. And then once I remove the strut, this thing is suspended and it can freely be wiggled, you know, up and down, left and right. And when you start cranking on it, it's basically you have nothing that's pushing against it, so it just kind of wobbles free. So I'm gonna just avoid taking that off. So I didn't see any tear in the gasket itself. You know, both of them move freely, and the you know, feels like there's still grease in there. So I'm just gonna keep them in there. So lesson learned: just get the struts as well as the and the shocks. So there we go. All right, so I went ahead and put the new strut in, and they have to be the right strut. This is the left-hand side one, and so I went ahead and fitted everything in. I used a jack underneath it. And before I started attaching everything, I want to make sure I at least hand tighten the bolts in there. So I started with this one back here. I was able to get it in. And I finger tightened. I used the old hardware. So I didn't use the new hardware because it doesn't have the kind of the ends that help guide you into place. So plus I just figured the threads are good. I'm just going to reuse this stuff. So anyways, I decided not to use this stuff with these washers. So I'll go ahead and put a picture of the reason why up in the top. And then I'm going to go ahead and before I secure the ones on the top down, I want to make sure that I get these bolts and nuts in for the upper controller arm. So let's get that done. Okay, I got everything finger tightened here, and I went ahead and tightened everything up top to the most I could get it without putting any major torque on it. And so I wanted to make sure everything was even on top because that kind of centers and aligns at least those bolts properly. So now I want to make sure I get this steering linkage in, since I already got the upper controller arm in here already without these nuts being tightened or torqued on. So I'm going to go ahead and lift the axle part up by the rotor. That should compress the spring a little bit. See that going up? And I want to be able to get it to the point where I can get this linkage in here. Make sure that's in the video. Yeah. Keep lifting it up. There we go. Got that in. I'll go ahead and get this finger tight here. All right. Okay, I got that tightened down up there. Not cranked on all the way or torqued, but I got it at least tightened on. So let's go ahead and we're going to torque on these now for the upper control arm. So let's get this first with the impact wrench. Oh, never mind. All right, do the top lightly, and we'll do the bottom. Okay, got that semi-lightly. Let's go back. We'll do the top upper controller arm now. Oh, where is it? There we go. Okay. Sound pretty good.
So hot. It's so wow.
It is loud, huh, bud? Alright, now we'll torque them up. Okay, we tighten things down below. Let's get things tightened here. Let's see, here we are up here. Things torqued pretty well on here. Yeah, you want to make sure everything's finger tightened first, and then you go back and you mechanically tighten them a little bit so everything's nice and snug. And then after you get the most important thing lined up and torqued down mechanically, then you come back and mechanically torque down the last parts up here. Good. Right. Last one here. There we go. All right. That's all torqued down. That's pretty good. So now we'll come back down to the bottom and do some heavy duty cranking on that. All right, the last part here, we're gonna crank this down to 90 foot-pounds. Got my torque wrench here. All right. Okay, let me get this pull off. Pain in the butt to get this side off. All right, now we'll go ahead and put everything back together. Get this front plastic piece. Make sure we got these aligned appropriately. All right. There we go. Mine. That guy goes in there. Perfect. Make sure everything is aligned right. You get one shot at it before you put it all back together. And then you gotta put the little plastic clips in. So of course this side goes on first. Alright, now we'll go ahead and put everything back together. Get this front plastic piece. Make sure we got these aligned appropriately. shocks onto the rear side here. I went ahead and took the wheel off, and that was much easier. All you're going to have to do is take off this bolt, and then up in here on the side where the muffler is, you have the heat shield, and that kind of makes it difficult, but you're going to come in here, and that's where you're going to be twisting that bolt, and that is going to be a 16 millimeter socket head. And so you're going to come up in here and put it on right about there, and that's where that's gonna, you're gonna undo that from. So I'm gonna undo that one and then undo this one, and so this one should be the, I think, 19 millimeter, and I'll let you know as soon as we get that on. But up there, 16 millimeter. You might want to wear gloves. I almost jacked my hand up there on the heat shield. It's pretty sharp. Almost hit. So I got the I got the 18 millimeter on here with the breaker bar. We'll get after it. Jeez, that's all there. That's a tough cookie. If yours are torqued on like mine are torqued on, you won't be able to get it off unless you have a breaker bar. Use a 1/2 inch breaker bar. Just sitting up. Alright, now I can just pry it fucking loose. It is free. Completely remove this upper assembly. Go ahead and come back in here. See if we can get it by hand. Use this. After with the 16 millimeter. go. Got it. To show you the difference between the old ones and the new ones, here's the new ones. Compress it, release it, and it pumps back up. So that's like a charged shock. All right. And granted, there's no leaking showing on this one, but you can compress a little bit and you have to pull it apart. All right, it doesn't go back or anything. See, no pushback. You just compress it, it stays. And where this one's charged, that fully pushes back. So. Okay, so here's the shock, and this is how it's going to be facing inside the vehicle. This extra piece right here is going to be facing up towards the bolt here, okay? It's going to be facing up like that. And then this part is going to be sideways up there, just like that. Let's go ahead and put it in. Top of that shock up in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and raise up the rotor a little bit so I can have this guy into place so the bottom can fit in there. Alright, still not at the right spot. Got a little bit farther to go. Good to go. Put the washer and nut on. This should be torqued to 90 foot-pounds. Okay. And then the one up top is at 72. Now to put the wheel on. Last little bit, finishing it up. This feels good. This feels real good. Line up. There we go. Always remember finger tight on your studs before you go cranking them down. I don't know how many places don't finger tight them down like discount tire, and they just go right on with the air ratcheting gun and strip them out or cross thread them. That is not what you want to do. So just take your time. Do it right. All right, and if you guys need new hubcaps, I'll put a link down below to where you can buy those. Actually, you can get refurbished OEM ones that look just perfect, as well as some aftermarket ones. So I'll put those in the link. All right. Not bad. So we'll go ahead and tighten this on. And I'm going to go ahead and secure this on. I'm not going to torque it down until I get it all the way to the ground, and then I'll torque it, as well as the front.